Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, is still around, and he's under the impression that the family values narrative that the Republican Party ran on back when he was relevant is still relevant today, and that's just not the case. Here he is trying to pretend as if Americans care about these issues on Fox News.
I think that the left has decided that they're going to try to push all the regular Americans into a corner where they either have to fight, in which case they'll be attacked by the news media, or they have to just cave and hide. If you listed every idiotic thing that the Biden administration has done in the first 100 days, you begin to realize whether it's threatening everybody who believes in the Second Amendment, or it's attacking everybody who believes in right to life, or it is attacking people of traditional values who are appalled that this administration would fly the gay flag at American embassies all over the world. I mean, you just go down item by item, and it's almost like they have a checklist of what can we do that will really, truly infuriate traditional Americans. And I've never seen anything like it. And somebody asked me this afternoon, I told them I couldn't imagine any administration which had been this deliberately anti-American and this deliberately committed to infuriating the majority of the American people. Literally, in over 200 years of history, I can't think of a single administration that has been this radical and this hostile.
Okay, so new polling on Biden's approval rating indicates that a slim majority of Americans approve of the job he's doing. When it comes to specific issues like his handling of the coronavirus, the numbers are actually great. Around 70% of Americans approve of the way that Biden has handled the coronavirus. We've been critical of Biden on certain issues like foreign policy and immigration, for instance. But it's interesting that Newt Gingrich brings up traditional values. Like, what traditional values is Newt Gingrich referring to? Like the traditional values of a president who had 3 different wives and had children from all those different wives, and then engaged in parties with people who are now facing some pretty serious sex trafficking charges. Are those the values that he's talking about? Also, he's making a big deal about the ability for US embassies around the world to fly the gay flag if they want to. I mean, look, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's a big deal, but I didn't hear him say anything when our first lady had been in lesbian photo shoots when she was a model. And I'm talking about Melania Trump.
Well, that happened.
Didn't seem to care. Didn't seem to care at all about that.
Yeah, traditional values. Newt Gingrich's also been married 3 times.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Okay, and he divorced one of his wives while she was in the hospital, and he says something about how his new wife was going to be like a Porsche or a sports car or something, and she was like a Chevy or something. It was just you find the actual quote on Google. It's worse than I've described it. He's such a despicable human being. And here he comes talking about how they're traditional values.
Is it a traditional value to pay hush money payments to adult actresses because you don't want that information coming out while you're president of the United States?
Traditional? Probably not traditional. Yeah. Now, are Republicans in favor of it now? They're like, yeah. And you tell them like, yeah, hey, they're flying the gay pride flag and embassies. They're like, oh, I hate gay people. That's terrible. Melania was in a photo shoot with another woman. Oh, that's hot, man. Oh yeah, Trump. He married a super hot chick. Yeah, that's the way to go, man. Get some lesbian relationships going. What? They don't care at all. They're not even paying attention to themselves. And I've never seen Newt Gingrich not say something was the worst that he had ever seen in 200 years. He sometimes calls himself an amateur paleontologist, right? And an amateur historian. Amateur is correct, right?
Yes.
He's like, I've never seen an administration this radical in 200 years.
No.
Dude, we had a civil war, okay? And some people, before and after, were kind of fairly, obviously, at least rhetorically, on the Confederate side. That was pretty radical. They wanted to split the country in half. Trump was pretty radical. Biden is the least radical dude on the planet. He can barely, you guys call him Sleepy Joe. You're like, oh, he's not doing anything.
I know.
He's the most radical guy we've ever seen in 200 years.
He's offended the majority of Americans.
Yeah, well, he won the election, so apparently not. And he won it by the popular vote by about 7 million people. But to them, real Americans and most Americans are just white people. And so that's why Newt Gingrich, he says it with a straight face because he really means it. It's like, no, black people and other people voted for him. Those aren't real Americans.
Right.
Real Americans look like me and have 3 wives and love checking out the president's wife with other chicks. But hate gay people because we gotta hate somebody.
Look, there's no more moralizing from the Republican Party after the Trump administration. No more. No one's buying it, no one believes it. In fact, the vast majority of, not vast, but the majority of Americans at this point report not being religious at all. Okay, so I'll give you those numbers, but imagine how sad it is to basically tie your entire career to a culture war that has failed. Because that's really all Republicans, beginning in his era, have presented to the American people as their political identity, their ideology. It's never really been about providing solutions for the very real problems Americans are facing. I mean, that's the reason why Trump, in his 2016 campaign, captivated the attention of so many Republican voters by presenting himself as someone who actually cared about the economic anxiety of Americans, right? But prior to that, Newt Gingrich and his ilk only offered culture war talking points that clearly have not worked. And you hear him trying to repeat the same stuff that he talked about in the 90s. It doesn't work today.
Yeah, you know why? Just one more thing about that. Because there's 2 things that you could legitimately criticize Democratic presidents about, which is foreign policy. But the problem is the great majority of Republican pundits and politicians are neoconservatives who love aggressive foreign policy. So they refuse to criticize Biden about that, right? And Obama back in the day. There's a Trump camp that's a little different than that, but the majority of the politicians and pundits are still in the old camp. And the second thing they can criticize them on is on economic policy that is not populist enough, that doesn't get you higher wages, that doesn't fight big business. But again, there's a wing now of Trump people, voters, etc., that agree with progressives on that, okay? But for most of the Republican politicians and pundits, they're like, oh my God, regular people, we despise them. So if Biden is kicking them, we love it. So then they got nothing to criticize them on. That's why they have to make up fake stories about how he's gonna ban burgers. And oh my God, remember we hate gay people, even though that doesn't fly anymore. Even in a 2017 survey, 63% of Americans said there's nothing wrong with gay relationships.
Yeah.
So now that number is way higher, over 2/3 say there's nothing wrong at all with it. And they're still beating those drums because there is no other drums for them. They're terrible on policy. Every one of their policies would hurt the American people, and they know it.
Just 47% of Americans belong to a house of worship. Most Americans at this point are not buying what the religious right is selling. And it's because they've proven through their own actions that they don't care about family values, they don't care about traditional values. They just use it as a tool for their political talking points and their political ideology. There's nothing outside of that, and that's the truth.
Okay, can I just say one more thing about that?
Sure, but this is the last story then, because we're...
Okay, all right, real quick. So look, when we started the Young Turks, 70% of Americans went to houses of worship. Now it's only 47%. When we started the Young Turks, only 8% of Americans call themselves non-believers. Now 21% of Americans call themselves non-believers. Okay, and I said when I won a Freedom from Religion award that I believe in the culture wars. I'm a very rare progressive who said it all throughout. I just believe in winning them. So we've been fighting the Bill O'Reillys and the Newt Gingriches for all these decades. And guess what? We're winning, and it's driving them nuts. And the reason we're winning is because we're right.
We're winning, but also more importantly, what's probably driving them crazy is they're one-trick ponies. They've got nothing else in their bag of tricks, right? So what else are they gonna talk about? Which is why all you hear from the Republican Party at this point, both the politicians and conservative members of the media, is stuff about burger rationing and stuff about Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head. I mean, when you really take a step back and you think about the lives that Americans are dealing with right now, the broken healthcare system, the fact that jobs continue to be shipped away, our broken supply chain as a result of COVID, and how vulnerable we are to these types of crises. Like, these are actual fundamental substantive issues that impact people's lives, and they want solutions for them. And Republicans have nothing to offer. They've already accomplished everything that they've wanted to do. They've packed the federal courts with conservative judges. That hasn't improved people's lives. They have cut taxes on the rich, even though the vast majority of Americans did not want additional tax cuts during the Trump administration. They got the tax cuts they wanted. That hasn't improved people's lives. What else do they have left? And then you look at Fox News, you look at Jeanine Pirro. You're inviting that dinosaur on your show? Like, how pathetic and sad is that? And what is he adding to the conversation?
Yeah.
What are the solutions? Ask yourself that.
100%. Let me add more things. I don't want you to get the wrong idea that the Young Turks single-handedly moved the entire culture.
No, you should get that idea. No, I'm kidding.
It's not single-handedly.
I don't think anyone has that idea, Cenk, don't worry.
Okay, no, of course not. But the internet did, okay? And look, we had some part to do with it. We've got about 20 billion views, so we were some portion of it, right? But overall, of course, the actual phenomenon is the internet itself. Did you know that the rate of people attending houses of worship and being religious remained the same for 6 decades until we got into the 2000s, okay? And that is why when I started saying on the show, honestly, and this is kind of embarrassing, but 2 decades ago, that no, religion will not last. Everybody was like, you're nuts. No way, these numbers haven't moved in forever, in all of our lifetimes, they're never gonna move. That's because the media sucked. And the media never told you the reality about religion. They never told you anything that's in those books. And they were not going to be able to stop the internet. On the internet, you could just read the books. I know you could read them in the hotel rooms theoretically, but nobody actually does that. But when you actually look up things and go, is that really true? And you Google it, you realize, oh my God, I didn't know what was in those books. No, so the younger generations are 30 points less religious than the older generations. So this whole nonsense about traditional values and the old school religions, it's not going to last. And every day we get stronger, they get weaker. That's just the reality. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.